It was day 31. I had survived a full month of the apocalypse. Things were going well, but I still had a lot of work to do. I continued sorting and dismantling the warehouse inventory because it all belonged to me now, and I could do with it what I wanted. And that's when I found it, the antique oven. This would serve me well later in the winter. It would be key to my survival. I installed it right away in the safety of my upper level. Then I started collecting scrap wood and loaded up the fireplace with scrap wood. Now that I would be warm this winter, I set about getting a renewable food supply. A rooftop farm would serve me well, so I started to get to work. It took a lot of digging and hard work, but it would pay off later with renewable food. I had all the seeds I would ever need from the warehouse, so I decided to plant a variety of vegetables and even some fruits. I was in luck. It started to rain as I was working, so I would not have to manually water my crops. With my farm up and running, I decided to head back to my old base to pick up some things that I had left behind, including, most importantly, the generator, which I would need to power the gas station. While I was there, I cooked myself up some steak. I would need the calories to carry the heavy generator. After I had picked up everything else I wanted, I grabbed my generator. My precious, precious generator. It was as good as gold in the apocalypse. And I immediately used it to power up the gas station. I now had access to virtually infinite fuel. My survival was one step closer to assured. My next objective was to head into town and help the local post office. I heard there was plenty of reading materials here to help me learn. The locals were not pleased to see me. But I found what I was looking for, all of the reading materials I would ever need. My skills would flourish with these books. I still didn't quite have the zombie slaying confidence that I would develop later, so I decided to avoid this fight and made a hasty retreat. While I was in town, I decided to raid the local pharmacy. From the looks of things, I wasn't the first one to have that idea. But I made quite the haul. I had all the medical supplies I would ever need. I was leaving quite the body count in my wake. I wanted to grab one more load of supplies before I left, but the dead had other ideas, and I was so tired that my combat abilities were starting to suffer. So I ran for it, and quickly drove back to base to secure my valuables. I fell into bed and crashed without even sorting my newfound gains. After I woke up from my nap, I started sorting through my materials, getting them into storage. And by that time, my garden needed tending, so I took care of it. I decided it was time to start trapping. Until disaster struck. I missed my rope and fell and broke my leg. This was quite the setback, but in the long run, it may have been a good thing, because it forced me to stay home and work on my skills. I splinted myself up and started hobbling around placing traps. Foraging proved difficult with a broken leg, especially in the dark, but I made it work. I would need the supplies. And I was hoping for a comfrey to apply to my broken leg for it to heal faster. Fortunately, I had already cleared this area of zombies, so I didn't have to worry about being attacked in my weakened state. I also added an extra sheet rope to make sure this wouldn't happen again. And my now flourishing garden kept me busy as well. Since I was stuck inside anyway, I decided to grind tailoring skill. This would save my life multiple times later on, but I did not know this at the time. I was just waiting for my leg to heal. A couple weeks passed and I was starting to feel almost healed when it happened. I fell and broke my leg again. More time passed and I just couldn't take it anymore. I had to get out. I hobbled my way back into town and started clearing out the zombies. And that's when I saw it, a trailer. I would need this later. But it was an excellent find, and I had to take advantage. The dead didn't want me to have my prize. But I convinced them to see the error of their ways. It took some, shall we say, clever driving, but I escaped with my prize. Over a month passed, and I woke up, and finally, at last, at long, long last, I was healed and back to full. Finally, back at full strength, I headed out because the bloodlust was overtaking me. I may have been a mild-mannered, unemployed gym rat in life, but living alone in the zombie apocalypse, I had become the zombie slayer, and I wanted to slay. So I did. I re-deadened every undead that I could find. And find them I did. Everywhere. They are billions! I killed them solo. I killed them by the 2s. I killed them by the 3s. I piled up their corpses. The only thing that could stop me was an alarm going off. I ran for it. Later in my adventures, this would have been a strategy, but for now, I had to get out of there. I still wasn't the confident zombie slayer I would become, so I made my escape to regroup. And regroup I did, and rearm, and then it was back out in the field. There were more undead to re-deaden, and I was the man for the job. I killed hundreds, and broke dozens of spears. Again, and again. I was growing bolder, more used to combat. I took on fights I never would have dreamed of previously, and I won them. There were a couple of close calls due to broken spears, but I persevered. Eventually, I ran out of spears and had to switch to my nightstick. But that didn't deter me. Eventually, I quenched my thirst for blood and turned my attention to more important matters. I needed a sledgehammer to secure my safety. My base was 90% safe, but I wanted to make it 100% safe. So I searched the hardware store. I searched the construction site. And I scoured my warehouse. But there was nothing. I even searched through the factory next door, and still nothing. The dead did not appreciate me poking around. But I won that argument. Eventually, I gave up and headed to the Gigamart for some supplies. There might be a sledge here too, but there wasn't. Spoiler alert. Most of the supplies that I would have wanted were already rotten, but I picked up a few things. And killed a few undead. And had another close call because of the sphere breaking. But I was able to fight through them. Apparently, my efforts had not gone unnoticed, and I almost met my demise when I ran into a tiny tree. But fortunately, my car held up, and I was able to make my escape. Very slowly. I did not notice it at the time, but I drove right past the prize I was seeking. There was a sledgehammer on the ground there at the intersection. Oh well, if only future Max could go back and talk to past Max. Somehow I must have known, though, because I took my frustrations out on the dead and almost got bit for my troubles. Hey, little guy, what you doing on the ground there? Here, have some stick. I woke up early on morning number 80, unsure of what was going on. It felt like more like a week had passed as opposed to just one night. So I took some time to reorientate myself and remember what I was doing and what my progress was. At this point, I was getting tired of driving back and forth between town and my base, so I decided to set up an outpost in the outskirts of town for overnight trips. I originally thought to build my outpost at this house here because it was close to town and had a fence. But then I changed my mind and decided to go to the two-story house a little farther away that I could make more secure. As always, the dead had other plans. I had to fight my way through them. They were relentless. But so was I. Eventually, I fought my way to the house and started securing it. I began by closing all the curtains so no undead could see me. Then I set up escape ropes so I wouldn't be trapped. I began disassembling all the furniture. I would need the wood and nails. And I used them to barricade the windows. I also barricaded the door. This would be an inconvenience for me, but it would help keep the dead out. Since I didn't have the sledgehammer to make it completely safe, I decided to double barricade both sides, inside and outside. That being done, I was able to sleep in my new base in relative safety. After acquainting myself with some of the new neighbors, I decided to head back to my main base. I needed to do some reading. I had skilled up. I was now becoming a master carpenter. After finishing reading Master Carpentry, I went back to my outpost and started building. I needed a platform for a rain collector for my sink. Of course, no base would be complete without power from generators, so I headed back to the storage lockers near my original base. And picked a couple up. One for the base, and one for the downtown gas station. I decided I needed another vehicle, so I went searching around the parking lot. And like an idiot, I punched the window with my fist and cut myself. Fortunately, I had plenty of medical supplies from my pharmacy raid earlier. I found a cab in relatively good condition and decided to make this my second vehicle. This time, I remembered not to punch the window when I broke in. It took a couple tries, but eventually I was able to hotwire the engine. It even had a full tank of gas. Things were looking up. New vehicle secure, I decided it was time to try out some guns. It did not go well. I did not know what I was doing. Fortunately, I still had plenty of spears from leveling up carpentry. I didn't give up, though. Unfortunately, all my popping off did was attract unwanted attention. Later, I would find this to be an effective strategy, but for now, I had fighting to do. Other than my dismal shooting, my skills were progressing nicely, and I alternated between leveling up and reading. I was now a master forager. It was day 95 and it was starting to get a little chilly, so I decided that I needed to get some firewood. I took my new cab with me and went out in search of a nice area to do some lumberjacking. I decided the area outside the storage sheds would be the safest place. So I started cutting down trees. I'm a lumberjack and I'm okay. I loaded up the cab, including the trunk and all the seats, and headed back with my firewood. It was hard and tedious work getting all that firewood into my oven, and I'm not really sure how it all fit. I wasn't sure how much firewood I would need, but I had about 400 hours now. Now that I didn't think I would freeze to death, I decided it was time to start learning to metalwork. So I started dismantling things at the factory. 1 level down. And only 8 to go. I disassembled everything in my path and quickly skilled up. It was time to read again. But oh no, I didn't have the metalworking book I needed. I looked everywhere. No intermediate metalworking. I thought I might have remembered seeing it in the storage lockers at the storage place, but I was mistaken. So I had to make a trip back to the post office. I was sure I would find it there. I gassed up the cab and headed out. The dead thought they could reclaim the post office, but I proved them wrong once again. I found what I was looking for almost immediately. I took a little extra time and searched through and found anything else I thought I might need as well. Not wanting to waste a trip to town, I killed a few more zombies. One even tried to run away from me. And did some more looting. And I found a rifle. This would serve me well later. Later, but not now. Now I was still terrible with guns. Hey, I killed one! My poor shooting skills did more harm than good and attracted unwanted attention, so I made a hasty retreat. The next few days I passed doing maintenance around the base, and foraging and trapping. And of course, tending to my garden. I even did a load of laundry. My first batch of crops was finally ready to harvest. I would eat well. I built an entirely new bedroom and plumbed it with a sink and everything. As I got ready for bed on the 100th night, I was feeling pretty good. My skills were coming along nicely. I had access to clean water and renewable food, and I was relatively safe. I had survived for 100 days and killed over 700 zombies. But winter was coming, and the dead, well, the dead are always hungry.